Welcome back, everybody. HealthForce podcast. RamsdenEliteFitness.com. RamsdenEliteFitness.com. I'm your host, Fran. What's going on? Got a question for you all today. Got a question. How many of you wear fitness technology? How many of you are wearing fitness technology? Fitbits, Garmin's, GPS, trackers, heart rate monitors, yada, 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 down the line. How many of you are in that space? The reason I'm asking is because we're going to cover some of it today, and I want to set the stage, right, as per usual, setting the stage for this. What is the purpose of wearable tech? Why do you, for instance, you as a consumer, if you have one or you thought about buying one, what's the appeal? What's the purpose for yourself? I think that's a very different question from asking what it does for myself or an exercise professional. For myself, to give you some insight, is I do not think that wearable tech is a good place to put your resources, a good area to spend money on, and that's right now of June 2017 here. Okay. That's as of now, in June 2017. And my basis for my reasoning for it is just it's not accurate. There's accuracy issues, and the whole purpose, from my perspective, the whole purpose is to actually track and collect data. Well, if your data that you're receiving is not accurate, well, then what the hell is the point of collecting it, right? And so I happen to be a little pessimistic about this topic. I tend to think that this, again, filters into our society and creates that environment and atmosphere where, again, we're encouraging people to give off the perception of health than actually people going about it to increase their health standards or decrease their fitness level. You know, so now everybody's sporting a Fitbit. Look, I've got a Fitbit. Look how much I care about my health. Oh, this one's fancy. LED lights. It glows. Like, we're becoming too fancy about fitness. Too fancy. We're spending money where we don't need to spend it just to let everybody know, hello, I work out. I mean, I discussed this topic earlier that, you know, and this ties into the whole fitness industry and the future of it and what we're currently offering the consumers in terms of classes and instruction and professional guidance. We're offering fancy stuff so that you can show off to people, well, oh, I do care about it. Regardless of the results that you're able to attain or not, that is almost now a secondary priority. First priority is perception, that you do work out or that you join some boot camp gym or that you're part of something. All right? And again, my argument will always be that's harmful. That is not moving in the right direction. I want to move in the direction of actual result-based, results-driven services, data collection, and we're actually showing a pre-test. You go through some sort of exercise programming and nutritional counseling, then we post-test it, and you have improvements, measurable improvements. And this is why I'm having a tough time getting on wearable tech right now in 2017, is because it's just not accurate, so what's the point, right? I do see the future of wearable tech being very interesting, and I think if companies are able to really hone in on accuracy as the number one priority, I think there's a big market there, and I would be the first to endorse it and encourage it. I'm big on information. I'm big on the data. It's just, you know, I think the question's twofold, right? Like, what's the right data for the client and the consumer, the average general population individual, and then what's information is needed for an exercise professional? I think those are two different questions, too. So it's a complicated issue. It's not as easy as just buying a Fitbit and then it's going to help you get in shape. And I think that's where my biggest bone to pick is with Fitbit and Apple Watch and all this, is they're marketing it to you like, hey, if you buy this is going to help you get in shape. This is going to be something that's going to really alter the way that you've operated, and that you're now able to get in shape easier with this technology. And that's highly inaccurate. So anything from the steps to the heart rate to all that stuff is not going to get you into shape. Got a couple articles to read through on the technology and the accuracy and the relationship-wise. I think the thing that I want you to take note of is also watch how these companies respond to criticism. I think that says a lot. From where I would come from, if somebody were to criticize Rams Elite Fitness for anything, okay, my first step is going to be to look at that complaint, look at the dissatisfied customer, gauge how accurate their assessment is of our service or what have you. And in most cases, I'll end up defending our company, defending our service, defending our reasoning for something, and then sympathize with them and show, empathy that I am sorry that, we couldn't respond to all their needs or that we weren't quite able to live up to their expectations. But I'm not going to throw our company under the bus. I wouldn't say, oh, you're right, we're doing it wrong, especially if we aren't. And just because somebody doesn't agree with a certain thing doesn't mean that, you have to just cave into them. I'm not into that retail style of customer service. We have employees to look after. But I would defend it. I would defend our technology. So in this case, if I was the CEO of Fitbit or the CEO of Garmin and all these different places, people that are making these wearable tech, if I were to receive a complaint, especially from media or I'm in an interview with media, and they're criticizing the accuracy, you've got to do one of two things. You've either got to admit it if your accuracy is not good and spin it that way, or you've got to if you believe that your tech is accurate, it is in fact accurate, then you've got to defend it. And I think what you'll see here is the way that they answer these things is very they look for the workaround. They do not want to answer it straight up. They're going to talk about something else. They're going to change gears, switch topics. And for me, that says everything that you need to know about wearable tech. So here, the first article is actually from last year at this time, 2016, end of May. Just how accurate are Fitbits? The jury is out. This is from the New York Times. Many users of activity trackers have always harbored suspicions. How accurate are these things? A handful of tests by journalists and researchers have tried to bring clarity to the issue. Results, alas, have been mixed. The latest study, again, this is 2016, released by the plaintiffs in a class action lawsuit against Fitbit, found that the pulse monitoring technology used in the company's wrist-bound surge and charge devices was highly inaccurate during elevated physical activity. Researchers from California State Polytech University, Pomona, had 43 subjects wear the devices as they ran, jogged, and jumped rope, among other activities, and then compared the readings with those of an electrocardiogram. During moderate to high-intensity exercise, Fitbit's sensors was off by an average of about 19 beats a minute, it found. The study, which was not peer-reviewed and was commissioned by the plaintiff's law firm, drew a strong denunciation from Fitbit, which released a statement calling it biased, baseless, and nothing more than an attempt to extract a payout from Fitbit. Fitbit said the public release of the study, coming before litigation in the case, has begun represented a bid to tarnish its brand. We are vigorously defending against these claims, it said, and will resist any attempts by the plaintiff's lawyers to leverage a settlement with misleading tactics and false claims of scientific evidence. The lawsuit filed in January seeks compensatory and punitive damages. It accuses the company of misleading customers about the reliability of the Pure Pulse technology and its heart monitoring wristbands and claims this could potentially have dire medical consequences. Now I'm going to pause. So far, Fitbit has defended itself against a study, and, I happen to agree to a certain extent. I would take that study, with a grain of salt, especially when it's being funded by the opposition, and it's only one study of 43 people. However, 19 beats a minute, that's not good. If you're truly off by that much, not good. And you see here the claim now. Now here's the charge. Okay, here's the charging claim, which I think is important, is that somebody is filing a lawsuit stating that the inaccuracy of your technology is dangerous, considering that you're essentially telling people that they can monitor their health stats through your Fitbit, and it's not even close to what like the true heart rate is, or et cetera, et cetera. That is potentially a dangerous situation. Now to that, there is some credence. Let's continue with the article. Fitbit is a young company based in San Francisco, is a leader in the wearables industry with a market capitalization of about $3 billion. In 2015, it sold 21.3 million devices, almost double its sales from the year earlier. At the same time, it has struggled with comparisons to its flashier rival, the Apple Watch. Alex Montoy, an assistant professor of clinical exercise physiology at Ball State University, is not connected to the lawsuit, said that the Pomona study needed rigorous vetting before any conclusions could be drawn. There's a clear interest in finding something in one direction, he said on Tuesday. That doesn't mean that the science is bad, but you have to be really careful when you look at the science. In another study, in the Journal of Medicine and Science and Sports and Exercise, 2 other functions of Jawbone and Fitbit devices, the step and calorie counts were put to the test by a research team led by Dr. Montoy. The researchers tracked 30 healthy adults as they performed various tasks. When the subjects were engaged in sedentary activities, like using the computer, the devices did relatively well. But both overcounted and undercounted as things intensified, Dr. Montoy said. The researchers were surprised to find, however, that their own laboratory equipment got the measures wrong as well. In general, these activity monitors worked as well as our research-grade monitors, Dr. Montoy said. The Fitbit and Jawbone monitors worked about as well as the best we can do as far as measuring physical activity. The pulse trackers have been a more recent addition to the suite of activity trackers on the market. Most use optical sensors that reflect light onto the skin to detect blood volume. So the article essentially wraps up by saying nobody knows what the hell's going on. The wearable tech doesn't appear to be accurate, but then again, the stuff that we're using in certain research laboratories isn't the best either when it comes to accuracy, so it performs about the same. Now, my conclusion about this article, what my big takeaway is, if we are unable to accurately measure blood volume from wearing a wrist tech or heart rate accurately, again, why purchase this? Why make the purchase? The average general population individual does not need to know every second of the day, every minute they exercise, what their exact heart rate is. Okay? I don't think they need that. That would be really, really cool, but we're not accurate enough to have it be it. So like now we're having data, we're having inaccurate data that most people probably don't even need, and we're paying money for that in the sum of having 21 million devices being sold and bought. That's my contention. And it has been my contention. And yes, I'm going to take this time to go on a quick rant. I'm going to try to keep it to 60 seconds. But look, once again, consumers are being advertised, marketed to, and convinced that they need something that they don't need. Or they're being convinced of something. They're spending their dollars on health and fitness in an aspect that they don't need to spend it at. Or they're spending it in the wrong places. This has been a theme for the last several years. And again, I just gave a conference talk about this. I just gave my conference talk about this. About how this future of the industry, where it currently sits with the landscape in the future, it's going to rapidly change. It's going to dramatically change. It's going to become disrupted. It's going to hit a wall. We're going to hit a point where the average consumer is done spending money on random things like an inaccurate Fitbit. They're going to quit spending money on a monthly membership at the local butt boot camp class where they do nothing except for hop around and sweat with their friends. But then everybody hits the same plateau, and then they complain about it, right? We're going to stop this. Healthcare and fitness is merging whether you all in the audience like it or not. It is going to merge. Now, what I mean by merge is that we're going to see a shift from entertainment, which is what we currently have in the fitness industry. We exercise for entertainment. We join the local class because it's fun. We're going to see this shift away from that to health-based results. Oh, hey, my blood pressure actually decreased as a result from this exercise program. Or my cholesterol levels, my fat percentage decreased. We are going to get accurate data. We are going to track that, and you're going to see that be the shift. People are going to stop spending money on things that don't matter. And if you're going to be late to the market as a company, so all you other people out there now that are in this for the short-term profits, good luck. I can't wait for the next 3 to 5 to 10 years to smoke you like it should be. You should lose. You're selling out results because you understand right now that the thing that's in is fun. How can we make this fun for everybody so they can spend money here? Shame on you. Can't wait. Back to our articles, folks. Next one here. Here's how accurate the Fitbit Ultra HR actually is. HR, I assume, stands for heart rate. This is from April 2017, so just a couple months ago. On BuzzFeed News. There are a lot of reasons why you'd want to get a fitness tracker. Maybe you're trying to gather insights about your sleep, or to get fitter, or lose weight. Well, first of all, I got to stop, folks. Sleep is such an interesting topic. We're going to have to do a podcast on it. It is one of the most confusing aspects of life. Nobody knows anything about sleep. We know that there's cycles. We know that REM seems to be the most important. But nobody can seriously sit here and say, science proves you need 7 to 9 hours of sleep or 8 hours of sleep every night. These are all guesstimates at this point. Correlations, things like that. Stuff that I don't consider true science and research to actually dictate standards, right? So there's a ton to be done on sleep, but no little fitness tracker is going to accurately track your sleep, considering we don't even know what the hell, how much each person needs, what's the optimal. We don't know any of it. Back to the article. Whatever your goal, one thing is true. A fitness tracker is useless if it can't accurately measure whatever it is you're trying to actually measure. Fitbit recently debuted the Ultra HR. It's an ultra slim wristband with a new feature, heart rate tracking. But just how accurately can the wearable track your beats per minute? When we did a first impressions review of the Ultra HR last month, our preliminary test suggested that the tracker's heart rate technology wasn't always on point. So we spent the last 2 weeks working up a sweat while wearing the new band. As we originally suspected, the Ultra HR struggled to keep up with exercises with a lot of movement and high-intensity bursts. It did, however, reliably measure resting heart rate. Okay, again, folks, if you're wearing something to measure heart rate, especially when you're exercising, so that you're going to try to calculate now calories burned, like all these things that rely on heart rate while exercising, and the damn thing can't even accurately gauge that when you're exercising, but it's great for when you sit on your butt at the computer. I mean, how much benefit is that bringing into your life? Yet, here we are dropping $150, $200 to get the coolest piece of tech ever to show it off on our wrists. We're having a mismatch right now. We're having a mismatch. Experts say most people don't actually need to know their exact heart rate during workouts, so this may not matter to you. But accuracy does matter for some, namely people with heart conditions and endurance athletes. Fitbit also heavily markets the heart rate tracking capability of its latest devices, like the Charge HR, Blaze, and Surge. And last year, it faced a class action lawsuit over its allegedly inaccurate tech. With all that in mind, we set out to answer the question, should you still consider the $150 Ultra HR? Here's what we found. Now, how we tested things. Unfortunately, we didn't have access to an electrocardiograph, a medical device that's considered the gold standard for heart rate. Instead, we used the next best thing. It's a chest strap monitor, which multiple studies have shown to be significantly more accurate than wrist-based heart rate monitors. And we used that as our control. We enlisted Open Lab fellow chartmaster Lamvo to help us sort through all the data. For each run and bike ride, we wore a Polar H7 chest strap, in addition to the Fitbit Ultra HR and the Apple Watch. Nicole wore the devices on different wrists, while Stephanie wore the devices on the same wrists. Now, during my first impressions workout, a quick 17-minute run with short, intense uphill sprints, the Ultra HR had trouble measuring my heart rate. So this time around, I went for a longer interval run, switching between a light jog and uphill sprints, and it lasted about 40 minutes. The terrain was a mix of trails and concrete on rolling hills. Now, after the run, I checked each device's workout summaries. The Polar Beat app measured 160 beats per minute average. Compared to that measurement, the Apple Watch overestimated the average by 1 beat, which is 161 beats per minute, and the Fitbit Ultra HR underestimated by 3 beats per minute, which is pretty impressive and consistent with Fitbit's claim of average absolute error of less than 6 beats per minute versus an EKG. I extracted the heart rate data from each device, and Lamb created an interactive chart so you can see exactly how the wearables perform through the duration of my run. Fitbit and chest strap appear to agree for most of the workout, especially during the more moderate sections where my heart rate is between 140 and 160. When my heart rate begins to pick up, that's where the Fitbit The Fitbit band is slow to catch up with my increasing heart rate. In some cases, the difference was 20 beats per minute off of the chest strap. So what's more surprising was how close the Apple Watch's readings were to the Polar H7. Towards the end of my run, however, the Apple Watch tended to overestimate my heart rate about 4 beats per minute. Okay, long story short, I don't even think 1 beat per minute or 4 beats per minute or anything like that is that inaccurate. So, in my opinion, from reading this article, these wearable tech performed above my expectations. They performed above my expectations. You do see that in terms of the intensity of exercise, when it is lower intensity, it tends to be more accurate. When you start to pick up the pace, when things get to get hot and heavy, it becomes less accurate. So over the big picture, if you're going back and forth between light intensity and heavy intensity, on the average, it should be pretty accurate. On the average, it appears to be pretty accurate according to this article. Does heart rate even matter? The truth is, however, most people don't even need the Alta HR or any wearable tech to be quite that exact, experts say. Knowing your precise heart rate during workouts is probably most useful if you fall into one of the two camps, whether number one, you have a heart condition, or two, you're a hardcore athlete. In the first case, you'd want to avoid pushing yourself beyond your safety zone, and in the other, you'd want to make sure your heart was pumping at a high enough intensity to adequately prepare for it, say like a marathon. Otherwise, if you're young and healthy, you don't need to know your heart rate. Mark Gillival, a cardiac surgeon at Cleveland Clinic in Ohio, told BuzzFeed. You might find it interesting. It's not bad to know your heart rate, but it's likely no health benefits to you or me. And you know what? I tend to agree with that. I think most general population individuals don't need to know their health metrics. I don't think they need to know their health metrics. What I find interesting is as a health professional, like for instance, if somebody like an exercise specialist in our company were training you or creating your exercise programming, to have this data, if it were to be accurate, I would view that as something of value to our company. Now, I don't know how valuable. It's nowhere near as valuable as what I would consider an accurate way to measure body fat percentage, scale weight, circumference measurements, blood glucose, cholesterol, blood pressure. I view that data to be far more significant than your heart rate when you exercise. Okay? But if there's an accurate way to do it, I do think collecting it is interesting. You are certainly able to use that information to analyze performance, specifically cardio performance. So when you're doing long endurance runs, like this article mentions, it is cool to see how your body's adapting and should lower your heart rate essentially over time as you're getting in better cardiovascular shape. But really, it's almost like the things like here's my biggest thing with wearable tech. The metrics that they decide to go after and test, I just view as the wrong things. I think they've done it for a couple of reasons. It's because it's relatively easier to create a device that's going to track your heart rate than it is to measure your percent body fat or to measure your hydration levels or to measure your blood pressure or your blood glucose like on the spot, right? There's a lot more invasive stuff that would have to happen for that to occur. And in my opinion, they're just trying to hop into the industry. And I don't know their true intentions because I still think it can go either way with wearable tech. Either way. Let me explain either way. First way is to come in like everybody else does, looking at short-term financial gain, billion-dollar industry. People spend money on health and fitness, but they tend to spend it on things that really don't matter, supplements that promise them goods and workouts that don't do anything, right? We're spending a lot of money there, and so they're going to come in, find a way to measure some sort of data, make it look flashy, cool, and trendy, and then sell it, get their short-term financial gain, and then when people realize this is stupid, doesn't do anything for us, well, by that point, they've already made millions or billions or whatever they're going for, okay? Number two is they want to get into the industry to provide value, to provide information and data that's actually going to matter, and the easiest way to get in currently is just to measure heart rate. It's not the most important, but it's probably the most doable. They got in. They're starting to mess with it. They know it's not perfect. They know it's not that important, but it's a stepping stone. And from here, they're creating a brand. They're creating a business, and they can build from there and maybe start to get into the other more drastic measurements and things that would really, really benefit clients, such as body fat percentage or hydration levels or blood glucose, like those sort of health metrics. So I think these companies can go either way, and I don't know. I don't hate Fitbit. I don't hate Apple Watches. I don't hate Garmin stuff. My contention is it's just not practical right now. It's money spent on things that doesn't matter. Once again, and that's the current theme of where we kind of are in fitness and what consumers are spending money on. A couple more articles here to wrap this thing up. Fitness trackers, heart rate monitoring accurate enough for most, says the study. This is from CNN. This is April, again, 2017. Heart rate monitor inside your fitness tracker might not be as precise as the equipment used in doctors' offices or hospitals, but researchers say that smartwatches and wristbands are accurate enough for most consumer needs. When tested alongside an ECG, which is that electrocardiograph technology, devices from Fitbit and Mio performed reasonably well at resting and active heart rates, according to a study published Monday in the Annals of Internal Medicine. It's very exciting because we've had so much advance in technology during such a short period, lead researcher Lisa Cadman-Bertram said. These trackers are such an enormous improvement over what we used to have. Now, I'm going to stop. Don't know this lady, but that is blowing this way out of proportion. I agree that I like the future of tech. I like the future of where this thing's headed, what it could be, the potential for it. And it has happened relatively short. I think that's accurate. But these trackers are such an enormous improvement. I just spent the last 20 minutes going through this podcast talking about how inaccurate they really are at times and how the data doesn't really matter. Even if you know your heart rate, what are you going to do with it? So, again, I don't know this lady's role, if she's an advocate for this or a researcher that's tied in. I don't know. But I do think she's blowing it way out of proportion currently here in 2017. Let's continue. For the small study, Cadmus-Bertram and her team at the University of Wisconsin looked at how the trackers worked for 40 healthy middle-aged adults compared with an ECG and against each other. Participants wore 4 devices during the test: Fitbit Surge, Fitbit Charge, Mio Fuse, and a Basis Peak smartwatch. Compared with the ECG reading, wearable products varied in their accuracy. Fitbit Charge performed the best at rest, measuring within 5 beats per minute of the ECG. The Basis Peak activity tracker was shown to be within 22.6 beats per minute of the ECG during the 10-minute resting test. Accuracy lessened in all the tested devices during increased activity. Monitors were off by a range of 20 to 40 beats per minute with ECG measurements. That's pretty awful. It's pretty awful. Findings that devices were more accurate during rest are similar to what previous researchers have found. Although data was not provided to show readings at each measured time, Cadmus-Bertram suggested that outliers, numbers well outside normal readings, may have caused a wider range. The critics question heart rate monitors. Critics, however, say that devices are not performing up to their advertised promises and could supply users with dangerously inaccurate information. Questions about the devices and their accuracy sparked a class action lawsuit in 2016 over technology and Fitbit. The lawsuit was filed on behalf of people who bought Fitbits, especially to help track their heart rates, whether for health reasons or to make sure they are getting the most out of their workouts. The lawsuit's ongoing. However, accurate they may be at rest, the Fitbits are wildly inaccurate as heart rate monitors when worn during moderate and high-intensity exercise, which is precisely the purpose for which Fitbit, in particular, markets them to consumers, said Jonathan Selbin, one of the attorneys who filed the lawsuit. Now, I'm going to interject because I agree. That's the issue. I think that's the underlying, I guess, big point of today's podcast is what are the intentions of these tech companies? Are you going to go for accuracy and provide actual relative information to people? Or are you hopping on the short-term train, the short-term bandwagon, and are going to act like your product is so great right now that people can just buy it and they'll get in shape and this and that when you know that that's not going to be the case? Number 2 is a problem for me. That's a big problem. And I'm going to create a little experiment here. I'm actually going to go to Fitbit's website. I didn't do this prior. I'm going to do it now, and I want to see what their website is looking like in terms of their marketing and this kind of stuff, because that's the most important part. All right, Fitbit. Right, this is right on their website now, Fitbit.com. This is important because this is how the company communicates to the consumer, right? It shows a picture of that Alta HR. It says our slimmest, most stylish heart rate tracker. You can buy it here. It says right here on the main page, Fitbit motivates you to reach your health and fitness goals by tracking your activity, exercise, sleep, weight, and more. That's all. And then they just have a bunch of products on their page. But I want to read that one more time here for you guys. It says, Fitbit motivates you to reach your health and fitness goals by tracking your activity, exercise, sleep, weight, and more. Now, my question with that statement is, okay, got it. Helps me stay motivated because it's tracking these things. Well, what if it doesn't track these things accurately? You know, how much does that really help me stay in shape? Or like, how is this going to help me reach my goals? How exactly is it going to do it? I'm not going to pick too much of a fight over that, but yeah, they're essentially trying to market it to you in this particular way, right? Like, here, you wear this stuff, you're going to have all this data to analyze. It should help you create the best workout for you, and then you'll stay motivated because you'll see progress. I think again that the main purpose of today's podcast, it comes down to that one word: accuracy. Let's see. Where was I, huh? I don't want to bop around here. Next article. Fitness trackers are terrible at counting calories, says Stanford study. This is from CNBC.com, May 2017. So literally this is last week. Wearable makers like Apple Watch and Fitbit are getting better at tracking heart rate, according to a new study from researchers at Stanford University School of Medicine. But those that measure calories are far from accurate. The researchers conducted a study to assess the quality of wearable trackers after finding a lack of data in peer-reviewed journals. Anytime we get data from a patient via a device, we have questions about the accuracy, said Yuan Ashley, an associate professor at Stanford. She focuses on cardiovascular medicine. These devices aren't regulated as they aim to optimize health rather than to detect disease, so they're not held to the same standards as their medical device counterparts. But many patients will still use them on a regular basis. So Ashley's team evaluated 7 devices: Apple Watch, Basis Peak, Fitbit, yada yada. A group of 60 volunteers using rather than using treadmills and stationary cycles in the lab. The researchers compared the devices to the FDA-approved gold standards rather than to each other. Here's what they learned. Point number 1, not all wearables are created equal. The Apple Watch was a clear winner in both heart rate and energy expenditure, while Samsung's device reported the highest error rates. Samsung, what the hell are you doing? Get out of this industry. These companies, man, always trying to find ways to make money and just get into it. The problem with some of these, they're so scatterbrained. There's a reason why Samsung, I mean, again, I understand it's just one article and one little test. But again, the point of it is, when companies start to lurch out into multiple industries and all over the place just because it's a moneymaker, how can you expect them to be accurate? You know, I'm pleasantly surprised to hear about Apple. The Apple Watch being the most accurate. And I've seen this now multiple times about Apple. First of all, Apple's standards they just kill life, right? I have an iPhone. I'm never switching from an iPhone to a Droid or whatever. I love the iPhone. I think the tech's great. The stuff they do on it's good. They kill it. They really do. They have a high level of standards. So I'm not ultimately surprised, but if I was somebody like Fitbit or somebody that's Garmin that's really into the GPS stuff, the fact that we're getting outplayed by Apple, I'd be salty about, right? But Samsung, come on. I know you're in electronics and this and that, but you're clearly getting into this because your competition is, and because it's a moneymaker. So I don't like that. Anyways, point number 2, the devices were consistently terrible at tracking energy expenditure, with the most accurate device off by an average of 27%. Ashley said the error rate should be less than 10% when these devices are used in non-medical settings. Again, man, that's, if there was a way to track energy expenditure for a human being, I don't even know, honestly, sitting here with my background, I don't know how they would actually go about that, but like that is something that would be of high value. That would be a true billion-dollar product. That would be amazing if that was something that could be done accurately. Essentially, what they're talking about with energy expenditure is you would stick on one of these Fitbits or whatever, and it would track how many calories you would burn in a day. You know, so like that way, when it comes to your nutrition, it'll be easier to program your calorie intake from that number. Because that's the thing right now is people have to kind of guess how many calories you're burning off, and there's so many things that play into that with hormones and body composition to physical activity to the foods you eat. Like there's so much into that. That if they can find a way to accurately measure that, that'd be amazing. So no, I'm not surprised that they're off by nearly 30%, which is just god awful. If somebody's literally going off their Fitbit for how many calories they should eat based upon how many calories that device is saying that they're burning off, and it's inaccurate by 30%, that could mess somebody up big time. Either direction, gain a lot of weight or lose a lot of weight. That is not good. Point number 3. Heart rate measurements have improved over the years. He describes some of the easy wearables as random number generators. Ashley said that users can rely on this data point. So they started off wildly inaccurate, and now they've become more so accurate. Now, my thing is, again, they're wasting time on heart rate when there's so many other metrics that they could decide to get into that would be of more value than heart rate. So obviously I applaud them for innovating and becoming more accurate, yet to me, it's not a big deal. It doesn't matter much to me. Next point, number 4. The devices were better at measuring data collected during cycling than walking. And then lastly, errors also tend to be more common in men versus women, those with greater body mass index and a darker skin tone. All right. Why are these devices so off when it comes to energy expenditure? People are so variable, said Ashley. Some people walk smoothly and others waddle along, and that's going to have some impact. Ashley now advises people to avoid trusting data like calories burned and using that to make decisions about what to eat. He warns against eating ice cream, for instance, simply because the tracker suggests that a user has burned sufficient calories for the day. Ashley hopes that wearable makers will respond to studies like these by releasing more data, whether it's positive or negative. Well, they're not going to release negative, just the way business is. The next iteration of his study will involve the volunteers wearing the devices in their daily lives rather than the lab. He's got a point. Wearable tech's not anywhere near as accurate as what they have to use in hospital settings. It's nowhere near as accurate. Now we have people planning their fitness off of these fitness trackers that aren't accurate. It's a recipe for disaster. Last article, here's what happened when I wore 10 fitness trackers at once. Done in May 2016, The Big Crunch, Eric Kemi. CNBC.com. This should be a fun article. Fitness trackers have been all the rage these days. It seems like almost everybody has one on, and cubicle dwellers everywhere are being prodded to walk a few more steps, a few more steps. There was news this week that people are suing Fitbit, alleging its devices aren't tracking their data accurately enough, specifically the heart rate. That got us thinking, well, let's try out some of these fitness trackers ourselves. I went to a local electronics store and bought a bunch of devices. He wore 10 devices, 5 on each wrist. I ran the devices through 3 specific tests, counting steps, heart rate, and then total distance. Let me try to say this first. None of this would qualify as a scientific study, but I tried to be more thorough than any typical consumer would be. The results, depending on your perspective, were either quite variable or pretty close. For steps, I did 2 different tests of step counting. In the first, I wore all the devices for a couple hours doing a variety of tasks. The step totals ranged widely by more than 20%. Now, that's a lot when you consider that many people have a goal of getting to 10,000 a day. At divergences this big, one device might say that I got 10,000, while another would say I'm stuck under 8,000. To be even more precise, I ran a second test, counting 500 steps out loud. In this case, I still saw a variance. The total range just after 500 steps was between 446 and 513. The most accurate device was the Fitbit Charge, which claimed that I got 505 steps. Skipping down ahead to the heart rate section. To test heart rate, I went on the stationary bike at the corporate gym. After a few minutes getting up to speed, I got my heart rate up to a consistent 140 beats per minute, based on me actually putting my hand to my carotid artery and taking my pulse. I did this same experiment 2 days in a row. Now, I found more variance, but the different devices generally undercounted the correct number. So in my brief experience, the different heart rate monitors all appeared to have their own issues. Some needed time to catch up, even though my heart was already going. It's also completely possible that I didn't place each device, perfectly on my wrist, but it's meant to be a test for what would happen if an average consumer just started wearing them and went for it. Some devices would flip back and forth between a very low rate, like 90, and then something more accurate like a 130. After I got off the cycle and rested for a while, some of the devices displayed a number that was way too high to be true. The heart rate tracking was the least reliable of the 3 tests that we did, but there is often user error with these products. So I ran the test with different versions where I wore the trackers on either wrist, One case I wear it all the time, yada, yada, yada. Distance walked. To test the exact distance, I got on a treadmill and walked half a mile. The second day of testing, even such a short distance was enough to see big deviations in the data. While wearing multiple watches at the same time, I could see the difference diverge right in front of my eyes. The more I walked, the more the watches would show numbers growing further apart. In the end, I couldn't tell what device was the most accurate. They were all pretty close, but they did diverge from each other. Maybe the best thing to do is just use these devices for relative purposes. Buy one and use that. Whatever you did today, do a little bit more tomorrow. Be a little bit more active in general. They get the directions right. Here's what the company said. I reached out to every company mentioned in this story. A Garmin spokeswoman reiterated my conclusion that it's about an individual's relative gain. Quote, Garmin activity trackers are designed to help users develop healthy habits and motivate them to beat yesterday, she said in an email. These devices are meant as a tool to encourage people to live more healthy, active lifestyles, and for the most accurate data, we recommend selecting a device with added features like GPS or a chest-worn heart rate monitor. Now, that's in line with the conclusions. These devices are best used for relative purposes. A representative of Fitbit stood by the company's research and product testing, but cautioned against putting too much stock in the exact figures. Quote, Fitbit trackers are designed to provide meaningful data to our users to help them reach their health and fitness goals and are not intended to be scientific or medical devices. Overall, the success of Fitbit product comes from empowering people to see their overall health and fitness trends over time. It's these trends that matter most in achieving their goals, close quote. Jawbone said, quote, we take a machine learning approach to develop an algorithm that performs work both for the counting of true steps as well as avoiding false positives. All right, enough of that. So there it is. I mean, we just wrapped it up. I mean, here's the problem that I have, again, with that last section about the companies making their statements. Yeah, they're going to make these statements when you reach out to them with criticism, but they won't accurately say that up front to you until after you've purchased their thing, until after you have complaints. In a perfect world, if I'm the big honcho where they are, I think there's a more practical role to play in being honest with your consumers. I do. I don't think that you can come out and say, look, this is to track your healthy lifestyle. This will give you data to help you change and monitor your progress. And then say, ... It's just for trends and big picture. Don't take this stuff too seriously. Like, to me, that's the problem because they never include the ... statement on the advertisements. So the big takeaway today, folks, wearable tech is far from where it needs to be. I am actually pretty bullish on it, though, in like the next, couple years, especially if they can get into some more meaningful data, like health metrics. I think that's an area that will be more beneficial, and I think that'll come hand in hand. I think we'll see a lot of this blood test that we do now eventually be able to do it at home. So, for instance, I don't know if you have to prick your finger to get blood out, but like you might have to have a device and you put it on your forearm or something, or on your arm, and it like puts a little needle in real quick or whatever and gets the blood out, and then it immediately will give you your test results of your blood. I think that's something that's going to be beneficial and can happen in the future. But again, right now, should you ever drop $150 on wearable tech? The answer is no. I would never encourage that. In fact, I would do my damnedest to try to talk you out of it and say, you want to spend $150? You want to spend $150 on health and fitness? I bet you I can get you to spend $150 in a more reasonable location than on a piece of technology that allows you to show off to everybody at the office that you're really trying hard and that you're going to get 10,000 steps today. Which, by the way, I don't find it to be very useful. 10,000 steps? I don't probably get 10,000 steps in a day. Does that mean I'm going to be unhealthy now? Again, we're talking about like correlation stuff where people that tend to be more healthy tend to move a little more. So therefore, we think that if we just take people and just have them walk more, that all of a sudden they're going to be healthier. And now what's happening is people are substituting going to the gym with walking 10,000 steps a day. Oh, well, my Fitbit says I'm walking 10,000 steps, so that's good for me. And I think people need to dig in a little more, do a little more research, and not be so willing to part with their money for things. Excuse me, like, I don't know. There's just a bunch of things you can spend money on right now with supplements and I would put wearable tech in this category that's just non-essential. not anywhere close. And then the accuracy quotient to this only makes that even more so. If you guys have Fitbits and think I'm dead wrong on this, or you want to refute some of the stuff we read today, please reach out to us. Rams and Elite Fitness on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Rams and Elite Fitness. Email address is just ramsandelitefitness@gmail.com. Send your testimonials there, or your personal experience there, or your rebuttals, all there. We will respond to all of it, as well as being able to DM us on any of those other social platforms. Again, we hope you found today's content useful. Whether you have wearable tech or we're looking into it or want wearable tech, hopefully this gives you good perspective. Remember, for date purposes, this is 2017, so maybe if you listen to this in 2020, things have changed since then. So find our website and do a search for wearable tech to see if we've done a follow-up episode. But I hope you guys will all join us next week again for another invigorating discussion for everything health and fitness related. Thank you all.